Part of the jail in Pensacola collapsed after the blast late on Wednesday, forcing an evacuation. About 600 people were believed to be in the building at the time.
Now, it's definitely public knowledge about how terrible the conflict in South Sudan has been since December 2013. But according to revelations by the United Nations, things are much worse than we actually thought. The United Nations Human Rights Chief, Navi Pillay, has said that more than 9,000 child soldiers have been fighting in South Sudan's brutal civil war, and both the army and the rebel forces are to blame. The UN is now concerned that South Sudan faces the threat of a famine, and the human rights chief was speaking at the end of a visit to South Sudan, where the conflict has displaced about 1 million people.
After the meeting, United Nations High Commissioner of Human Rights, Navi Pillay, described her talk with opposition leader Riek Machar as good.
We landed, went through a little village and met him under a tree. He had a stack of books in front of him. One of them was about a failed state. We had a good meeting of about 35 minutes and gave him the concerns of the Secretary General about protection of civilians. And we received assurances from him that he himself is investigating the human rights violations that occurred in Pt2, and that he is also concerned about protection of civilians here. He finds it difficult to be in the situation where he is, but I welcome the fact that he is clearly thinking in terms of a political solution.
More than 1 million people have fled their homes since the fighting erupted in South Sudan in December 2013 between troops backing President Salva Kiir and soldiers loyal to his sacked deputy Machar. The fighting appears to have done its part in exacerbating ethnic tensions between Kiir's Dinka people and Machar's Nuer tribe. Unfortunately, negotiations between the Kiir government and rebels loyal to Machar have failed to advance since the January the 23rd signing of a ceasefire, which never carried water. Based on reports by the United Nations, the rebels were simply ruthless, hunting down men, women and children last week in a hospital, church and mosque in the capital of the oil-producing Unity State, and then killing them based on ethnicity and nationality. After the rebels seized Bentiu, Dinka residents of Bo town in Jonglei attacked a UN base last week where about 5,000 people, mostly Nuer, were sheltering. In an effort to bring the crisis to an end, Adama Dieng, UN's Special Advisor on Prevention of Genocide, accompanied Pillay to the meeting and also commented on what the former Vice President had to say.
He did mention that he is investigating his own people, but at the end of the day what is critical is that the hostilities have to be ceased and that both leaders come together so that the people of this country, South Sudan, not be betrayed.
Thousands of people have been killed and tens of thousands have sought refuge at UN bases around South Sudan after the violence spread across the country.
Let's speak to the Voice of America's John Tanza now to give us more details on this situation. Hello, John. Now, what proof is there to confirm that child soldiers have actually been recruited as suggested by the UN Human Rights Chief?
Well, there are lots of proofs of pictures coming out of places controlled by the rebels. There are pictures of children as young as 16, under 18, who are carrying AK-47 rifles, brandishing them on camera. And even on the government side, there has been a recruitment drive that has been going on in South Sudan, mostly in the 10 states. And during a situation like this, to be honest with you, politicians don't look at age. What they need is the number. A big number of people helps them to achieve their goals. Yes, there are pictures showing that children under the age of 18 are taking part in this conflict.
Well, Well, there seems to be an apparent lack of concern on the part of the leaders, even now that the country faces the threat of a famine. Why is that?
Well, the two leaders are struggling to, hold their grip on power. And in so doing, they are paying less attention to the plight of their people. It's unfortunate, but that is the nature of politics. And what is coming out of Juba is that President Kiir keeps on insisting that he's a legitimate leader, elected, and he is not going to step down. And the rebels are saying he has lost the legitimacy. So the two leaders are caught up in a blame game, and hence they've forgotten the suffering of their people.
Now, John, just before I let you go, is there an end in sight or anything to look up to in the hope that this crisis might end anytime soon?
Well, there's a little hope with the threat of sanction on leaders who are deemed to be working to prevent peace or working on the way of peace. These sanctions are yet to be imposed, but it's known that U.S. President Barack Obama signed executive orders paving way for targeted sanctions on leaders who will stand on the way of peace. So the threat of sanction might deter the leaders from, continuing with this fighting. And the other thing is also the international community is getting upset with the situation in South Sudan, and they want an end to this conflict. So yes, there is hope that there might be an end to this conflict very soon.
As always, John, it's been a pleasure having you join us here on Network Africa. I've been speaking to the Voice of America's John Tanza. He's the managing editor and the co-host of South Sudan in Focus program. Well, we're certainly keeping our fingers crossed for peace to reign in South Sudan. However, there was a rather huge disruption in Libya when gunmen stormed the parliament, forcing MPs to abandon a vote on a new prime minister. The attempted vote followed a resignation of Abdullah Al-Tini, who stepped down as prime minister earlier last month after he and his family were targeted by militiamen. Now, just before that incident, there was another gory one earlier in the day when a suicide bomber in a car killed at least 2 people and wounded 2 others at an army camp in the eastern city of Benghazi.
Speaking at the site, the base commander Salem Al-Neli explained how the car exploded at the gate.
The explosion took place when a vehicle approached the main entrance and asked the guards to open the gate that he wanted to enter at 6:30 a.m. but pressed the button that led to the explosion. Look at what it caused, he said.
Libyan armed forces have been battling militants from hardline Islamist groups such as Ansar al-Sharia, which has been listed as a foreign terrorist organization by Washington.
We will stay here. Even if they use the explosions or mines, we are getting the help of God, but they are criminals. 2 people were killed and 1 injured.
Most countries have closed their consulate in Benghazi, and some foreign airlines have stopped flying there since the U.S. ambassador and 3 other Americans were killed in an Islamist militant attack in September 2012. Libya's central government is struggling to control armed groups, militias, and brigades of former rebels who helped oust Muammar Gaddafi in 2011 and now refuse to disarm.
Well, after the break on Network Africa, it's all about doing the catwalk in Egypt. Find out what I'm talking about in a moment.
Many factors define your health. Some you can control, while others are simply beyond you. On Health News, we highlight all these factors and through medical experts provide information that will help you take informed decisions on healthy living, nutrition, and keeping fit. Get incisive health policy analysis. Health News, promoting good health.
Welcome back. Now, just before I take a bow, there's a bit of optimism in Egypt in spite of the crisis, and it's all about the fashion industry. The Cairo Fashion Festival kicked off on Friday, April 25th, giving young and accomplished local designers a platform to display their work in front of fashion enthusiasts.
The event was founded last year by Omar Makdur, with the aim of bringing together emerging fashion designers and prominent ones. He wants to make the festival a quarterly event.
The goal of this was that we form a big platform one day, 20 runway shows to a number of designers, top designers and young designers in one place. This was a dream for us to do such a thing.
Young local designers rarely find a platform to showcase their designs in Egypt, with an industry that is overwhelmed by imported goods and international brands. But with a runway in addition to a display area for retailers and buyers, the missing links have been filled in by the festival. Fashion designer Diana Shaban studied abroad but returned to Egypt to display her designs, which she describes as fabrics surfaced through the centuries, old buildings of Islamic design that line the heart of Cairo. She is of the view that with its rich heritage, Egypt has a lot to offer, but cultural and personal restrictions were suffocating talent.
Absolutely. I feel like there's a tremendous amount of talent in Egypt, and I feel like the problem is we're all really stifling ourselves. I feel like we're putting a lot of restrictions on ourselves that we shouldn't be. I mean, we're one of the oldest civilizations in the world, and there's so much depth and there's so much heritage, and if we can just tap into like an ounce of the amount of like cultural depth that we have here, I feel like artistically we can be able to create the most incredible things. We just have to let ourselves break past all these like cultural boundaries and personal boundaries that we're restricting ourselves with to really allow ourselves to take our artwork a step further.
The event also provided an opportunity for young entrepreneurs to display their products for sale.
Look, introducing you to renowned Italian brand.
On the catwalk, models sashayed down, first wearing clothes by young designers. As the night progressed, haute couture designs from established designers such as Eman Anashati and Nancy Naguib were on show. The editor of fashion magazine Fashion, Suzanne Sabay, believes that the country has few opportunities for designers.
Talent is everywhere, and with 90 million people you must have talent. I mean, you must find some that are talented, but the problem is they don't have opportunity to grow. The ones that don't have the money, they eventually end up maybe in a factory, copying patterns and copying designs from magazines and producing. The ones that have the money will start the business and probably after some time even get discouraged, and in the end of the day, if you lose 2-3 years, then you, even if it was just for the fun, you say, okay, let's take a stop loss and that's it. But it's very tough now. I hope that with time, when the country gets more stable in the political situation and people start going down again more to stores, shopping more in Cairo, that it will reflect on the retail industry, that all the stores will do better, and with the designers.
But Sabay is optimistic that political stability will make a difference.
And that's where we draw the curtains on this episode of Network Africa. Thanks a lot for being a part of the show, and of course I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to send me an SMS via the number on your screen. Until next time, stay blessed and proudly African. I'm Cynthia Are. Bye for now.
A time comes in the life of every race when people are driven by echoes of the past to chart a course for an exalted future. Africa is at this threshold, as major actors in the Africa arena plot a renaissance towards common destiny. Let's paddle across the streams of yesterday, from the backstreets of Africa to the defining roles of policymakers, the political realities of the African nation, balance of power, and the strive to sustain national interest and identity. Join us on Network Africa on Channels Television. Network Africa, the rallying point for the masses.